So it is Tuesday, December 8th, 8:05, and a meeting of the curriculum committee. We'll just go around and take attendance. I'm Erin Dove, school board member.
Tani Schmidt, school board member.
Tim Harder, Director of Technology, Libraries, and CT.
Laura Jackson, Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning. Heidi and Nancy.
Justin.
Thank you.
And I'm Heidi Smagola, Curriculum Coordinator.
Kevin Hyde, Curriculum Coordinator.
Jennifer Boyer, curriculum assistant.
Okay. Laura, you want to get us started?
Surely. Our first item on the agenda is a high school intervention class, and Heidi Smagola is going to talk about the course change. We have, in our current BYOC course catalog, we list some reading intervention courses with the vendor name. And Heidi's going to talk through the, some changes to that that we're going to put into place. We don't use that vendor anymore. Heidi, would you go ahead, please?
Yep, thank you. So at the high school level, we know that we have a need to continue to support some of our students, particularly juniors and seniors, who are kind of at risk and may need an alternative learning path, or who are also credit deficient and needing some support in that realm. To support those areas, we realized that we needed to redesign one of our courses slightly at the high school to offer that option to them. So you'll see in that executive summary that we had previously offered a course that was called Read 180A. As Laura said, we no longer use that vendor for Read 180, which is basically an online-based program that students didn't necessarily have the teacher as the facilitator as much as the computer was the facilitator. And so what we're doing is revamping that course to put the teacher more in control of the student learning, be responsive to the student needs, with the goal of getting students to the 9th grade reading level. So should they need to access an alternative reading path or learning path, they have the ability to do so. Some of our programs within our district require that 9th grade reading level as an option for entry point for that option. And we want to make sure that we're supporting our students with achieving that and giving them an option within the school year for doing so. So you'll see in the executive summary the revised course proposal. The course proposal would run as a semester-long course as opposed to a year-long course. It would primarily be open for juniors or seniors, though it could be available for a freshman or a sophomore if needed as well. And it would focus on those literacy fundamentals or those literacy principles that students need, helping them to clean up some of their comprehension skills, their vocabulary skills, those pieces. It's also important to note that this would be a course for credit, and that a student might be able to take this class more than one time. So for example, if a student took it during the fall semester and they were almost to that 9th grade reading level, but not quite there, they may take it again during the spring semester to finish achieving that goal. That would be kind of determined with the instructor and the counselors and people at the high school as well as the student and the family, but it would be an option available to our learners if it was needed. Our goal would be to begin to offer this class during our second semester this school year, so that we are making sure we have something available for these learners who need something at this time.
Does this meet an English requirement then, credit?
It would count as an English elective.
Okay. And if they get credit for it and they take it multiple times, do they just get credit for it the one time or each? Like if they needed it twice, would they get credit twice?
They would earn a half a credit each semester for it. Up to 1 full credit, up to 2 semesters.
I'm assuming this is a course that students are guided towards.
Correct.
Okay.
They would have to meet the entrance criteria, which means they demonstrated a need and a reading level below the 9th grade level.
Can you explain why we're no longer using Read 180 as the vendor?
Sure. Read 180 is a product, well, I can try because
Or just
we actually have
a
used
brief
it
summary.
since- Yeah. Read 180 is a program by Scholastic, and it was actually no longer used prior to me coming into the district.
Okay.
And it takes a 90, well, not used with the general population. There may have been one or two students who were finishing it up. And it's a 90-minute program. Again, as Heidi had stated, it's computer facilitated. So the students go, essentially it uses a reading workshop approach. And they spend 90 minutes on the computer in 3 different sections. And ideally, one of those is teacher assisted, but it wasn't always done with a teacher assistant. 30 minutes is involved in reading the text online with answering questions that are part of the computer program. And 30 minutes is spent, approximately 30 minutes in writing responses. And I don't quite recall the other 30 if it's not with the teacher's assistance, what that looks like.
But is what's replacing it, is that better, or what's the reasoning behind the change, I guess, is what I'm looking for?
Yeah, so the reason we're wanting to utilize the course format for our students is because it allows a more individualized approach designed by the teacher that's working with the student.
And could the teacher still use the type of online program like this? Like, I remember my kids using, I think Head Start, Jumpstart or something. Like when they were learning to read, they, because it's like gaming.
Yes.
And it's, the kids just love seeing their progress. And so a teacher could still choose to use something like this, but it wouldn't be required.
Correct.
So, okay.
And we don't purchase Read, we haven't purchased Read 180
Okay.
in a number of years.
Okay.
Through an annual
So
subscription.
our license isn't up to date, basically.
Correct.
Okay.
Additionally, Read 180 requires the instructor to actually have a reading specialist license through DPI, so it's a 317 license, because it's considered a replacement program versus a supportive program. Because of that, we would have to have a different type of staff member to run this course as well, and we're talking about providing students not with support with our general curriculum, but giving them basically an alternative curriculum, which is really not our goal here, which is another reason why we moved away from that program.
I like the idea of having the more personalized learning, flexibility staff-wise. How do we ensure parents and the community that the objective of the student achieving this 9th grade level, reading level, is achieved?
So we wouldn't report out the individual student to the community, but what we can say is, as part of the program, the teachers are monitoring the student progress and utilizing a progress monitoring format.
Okay, that's
So
good
that-
enough.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. And that progress monitoring format is the same one, I assume, that's used for other students, so we have a comparative model.
It would depend. If we utilize the Ingenuity program, we would be utilizing that, with the progress monitoring as embedded within that program. Otherwise, we would be using similar assessments that we use with other students
Okay,
to monitor that data.
okay, good.
It has to be designed to align with the intervention that's being done.
Okay. That makes sense.
Nancy, do you have any questions about this?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. Nope, I totally understand. It sounds like a good plan to me. I like the idea that the teacher's more involved. I think that will help for students who are struggling as opposed to just online and computer. I mean, obviously, if the student is struggling, they were struggling before this class and need some type of intervention. So I think it's a good plan.
Heidi and the high school team collaborated quite a bit in really looking at the students that the teachers were concerned about and what programs existed and what programs just needed some refinement and in order to be able to utilize with the students. So I commend all of the teachers involved and the administrative team and Heidi for doing that.
So this decision was primarily because the teachers felt like the students' needs weren't being met with the single option of Read 180.
Or of the classes that are being utilized with our 9th and 10th graders, they felt like we were missing some of our older students.
Okay.
And it was preventing them from accessing other programs. So in order to make sure that they got what they needed so they could access other programs like the GED-O2 program and be successful in that, they wanted to make sure they gave the kids every opportunity for, to find a pathway for success.
That's great. Okay, good, thank you. I appreciate the staff putting the students' best interest instead of just going with the status quo.
Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you.
And Heidi will probably exit the meeting at some point before it's done, just because she has another, our PCL model, work to do with that this morning. So the next item on the agenda is the review of the educational options in West Bend. Every year, the parents in West Bend School District, usually through our regular newsletter, receive a notice of the educational options that will be available in 2021, in the 2021-2022 school year. And so that is typically sent in our normal newsletter from and reaches our families that way. It is also a very similar notice is required to be a Class 1 notice that is published in the newspaper that is most read by the community at large, because that's how it goes out to the whole community. And that is due to be published in the newspaper by January 31st of each year. So I'm bringing this forward to the curriculum committee of the board so that you can see it and ask any questions about it in advance. There are specific requirements in the parental notice. One of those being the current school report card rating for each of our schools. And so that is listed on the actual document. And then within the document will be a link to the website where the school performance reports are located. And that will go out again electronically to our families so that they can follow the link for the school performance reports. That each school has their school performance, individual school performance report on their website, and we have the district report accessible. This fall, because of the pandemic, there was no state assessment completed in the spring of 2020. So this fall, there is not an updated rating. So the accountability ratings are from the 2018 school year, 2018-2019 school year. And those are the most recent, so those will be the ones that stay.
This is exactly the verbiage that's going to be published, correct?
Correct.
And can you show me where it says that this is the last year's results?
It says, what it says is, please note that the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction will not be releasing district or school report cards for the 1920 school year.
Okay.
It doesn't state that they are from the 2018, so I probably could put that.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that if it did say that this is from 1920, that it's not just us, that it's, you know, statewide. And I think the statement, yeah, I think the statement achieves that message, so.
We are to notice all of the opportunities available to our students, including the opportunity to participate in private school education through the voucher program with the state. And so we do list on the last page, it's the third page of the document, we state currently there are 6 private schools participating in the private school choice program. And we did review that to update that for this year. In the past, the state has updated that in February, which is after the publication is required.
Mhm.
This year, I believe that it has already been updated for next year.
And who wrote this?
Back in, so I just revise it every year.
Okay, good, you did, okay, good. No, I know, it's very good.
Thank you.
I like that it includes, I mean, it's comprehensive, yet it obviously you have to simplify it for the, but yet it's simple yet comprehensive.
Are there any questions any other questions about the public notice?
The West Bend Virtual Academy is in here too?
Correct.
I assume?
And it's
Okay.
on the bottom of the second page. Last year's notice indicated the change from WOBOLA to WBVA and that it be opened up to kindergarten through 6th grade. The next item on our agenda is course planning guide updates. So every year, our course planning guide is published. Last year, we took it to the board simply because there were so many changes to it from the previous years. And this year's changes are really about, we fixed typos. We updated things to be more clear, language to be more consistent. And we had a group of teachers from the high school that went through every course in there and read it from their perspective. And also, they all had responsibilities for connecting with other teachers on double checking. Like there wasn't a CTE teacher on the team, so there were teachers that had the responsibility of checking with the CTE teachers. So every department was conferred with in the updates to make sure that if any certifications had changed or the language, of the required language needed to change, that has all been updated. Our Susan Sarek, who oversees the AP program, reviewed that portion of it. Amy Richter from the College and Career Center reviewed portions of the course planning guide, as did the administrators at the high school. Tim Harder took a really close look at all the TC and transcripted credit. He also connected on many of the CTE courses and information in there. So, as you know, we recently had name changes to some of our courses, and along with that, you know, all of those changes have to be made throughout the book. And so Jennifer Boyer really went through that with a fine-tooth comb. For example, the class, the ISICS class that had existed and is now a career explorations class, And with that change, I don't know, Jennifer, there were probably like 12 places in the book. And went through it with a very fine comb to make sure that all of those corrections were made. There is nothing in the book that the board hasn't previously approved, but the goal was to, and will continue to be, to make it very user-friendly, and to provide the information needed for students and families to make course selections.
Does anything in each course say, in the course explanation or title, say anything about like formerly known as or formerly called?
I don't think we, like, the
Yeah,
computer.
there are, and I'm looking at Jennifer because we were going back and forth on this, so we, as you know, we've changed some IT courses.
Right.
So in the top it will say, it used to be computer hardware support, now
Okay.
it's TCIT fundamentals 1 or 2.
Okay,
So,
'cause
'cause there is a
some-
changeover in that for kids for a couple of years.
Because some kids have like their, you know, they plan out their coursework for their
Oh,
high school
right.
career and they're anticipating this, and then when it changes, it throws them off and, you know, might panic, but like, oh no, it's okay, this, if you were looking for this is what it's called now, that sort of thing. I just, as me as a parent or as a student, that would be helpful. So I'm glad that that's in there. It's not, yes, you're not,
I know
you
you're saying-
wanna
I don't
look at
think
it
we
as
did
a
that for
single-
the ISICS course that's now career exploration, the seminar course.
okay,
All the other IT ones and stuff were.
I think we did, yeah.
okay.
The CNA course is now listed in the course planning guide. And the reason it's in there now versus how we had done it before, the way we were operating the course, and Tim can speak to this because while we started collaborating with Marine Park on it last year, Tim completed that work with them this year. The CNA course, the way we had been offering it, we should have been filling it first with Marine Park students, and then any leftover spots our students could have. The way we it's the same course, it's just that our internal processes and our collaboration with Marine Park is handled a little differently. So it's our students and our students only that have, take the course that's on site.
Yeah, we basically contract that service with them. We don't have a
Right.
teacher who can teach CNA on site. And so what we, in the past, really, what we found out is they could have put any Marine Park kid, adult, whatever, and come and taught here. So we're guaranteeing our kids, in essence, I think it's 16 spots every semester when we do that. And so then it's listed in there, we have priority, we have a process if we get to that point where maybe we have some juniors who are interested. It's really hard to take the course as a junior because you have to have an age requirement and some things to do the final portions of the course. And so now we actually have that guarantee for our kids here. If we don't fill our spots, we have the right to, in essence, sell our spots to other districts. So
Okay.
we can control that. So last year, we actually had a young lady come from Random Lake, I believe, and participate in our class here.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have more control over it for our kids versus leaving it up to, kind of like college and, oh, Erin showed up first, she gets a spot versus Tani
Right.
type of thing. So-
Yeah,
So-
and that class is at the high school?
Yes.
Physically? Okay, and that's mentioned, is that mentioned too, so people don't make assumptions that I'm gonna have to go over to the Marine Park campus?
I don't know that it's physically, because if we run out of room, we have the ability through Start College now to send you to, and we've had to do that, but
Right,
it doesn't
yeah.
fit in the schedule, so we say we offer it.
Uh-huh.
Our first priority will always be put kids on our campus, if it
Right.
fits into their schedule, but we do have, I believe, 2 students this semester who couldn't take it, because it's typically a morning class.
Mhm.
So they couldn't take it in the morning, they're taking it, I think one of them's taking it at night up at Marine Park.
Okay.
And so we don't specifically say it's here, but
Because that
because
could
they.
limit things
Yeah,
and restrict.
because
okay.
they have to apply, that
Mhm.
goes through one of our counselors at the high school, Matt, and he kind of has that conversation of, if you don't get it here, this is your option to take it somewhere else.
Okay, good, okay. I just would hate for anyone to be discouraged from taking it just by reading the description, making assumptions that, you know, means, oh, I don't want to leave campus, you know. Okay, good. But I understand that need. I'm glad you're thinking about it from all angles. Thanks for the updating that.
We have some forms in the back so that they're samples, so you're not just pulling the form out, you have to get the form from your counselor. And that's the point, you have to go see your counselor and have a conversation with them in order to get the form, so they're all labeled as sample in there.
Okay.
Our early graduation exhibit is in there. The exhibit is not an approved by the board. The process for early graduation is approved by the board and the general parameters around that. The form that is used is administratively developed. And during the pandemic, we did some revisions to the form because when we, in March, when we went to emergency distance learning, we gave students the option if they wanted to graduate early, to now request that, if they had already met all of the requirements. And in doing that, we did modify the form that was used a little bit because of all of the conditions. Still, same requirements, you have to meet all graduation requirements, and your parent has to approve. Your counselor is checking that you've done everything necessary for graduation. And it is signed off on by their counselor, the principal, and the superintendent. And so in the initial use of the form, after it was originally deployed out, the counselors came back with some feedback wanting some revisions to it, simply because there was some redundancy in the form, and they felt like they were doing and answering the same question again and again and again. And for students and families with it as a PDF on the district website and sent to them often in PDF form, they were sometimes they're printing it off and handwriting and everything in order to get the letters and the individual information in it. So that form will likely be revised in the back of the course plan guide as well to be more simplistic form. Still, the counselor verifying that they've met all their graduation requirements or will in successful completion of the semester they're currently in. And still with the principal, the counselor, and the superintendent signing off. Parent has to approve. That's all. So that's before it gets to anybody else.
I like that there's a clear process. Hopefully this is not a point of order, but do the kids, I like that the counselors are there to guide them through this otherwise daunting process. Do we require kids to see their counselor so many times a year, or does the student have to initiate a meeting with the counselor?
With the early graduation process, the student initiates the meeting with the counselor, and more often than, whether or not a student along the way is meeting with their counselor is really kind of up to the student and the counselor. We do have consistent times where they're checking in.
Okay,
And,
where the counselor's checking in with each of the students assigned to them?
Yeah, so with
Okay.
the course registration process,
Yeah.
once this book is done, printed, we print it now. We weren't printing it before. Last year we made print copies for all freshman families.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had additional copies at the high schools and here, so that families new to the district would see it, would have access, so that if someone came in, you could sit down with them and go through it. It's available on the website as it has been for years, but.
It's such a large document. I'm glad that it's also printed, because it's easy to get forgotten or lost when it's online.
Yeah, and I think when you're a parent of an incoming freshman, that whole thing, well, you guys know.
It's very overwhelming. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And the ability to go back and look through and like,
Nothing beats that still, in my opinion.
Yeah, We are doing
Sorry,
online
Tim.
registration though.
No, I'm with you. I have a printed copy on my desk to review
Yeah.
it all, so don't feel bad.
Yeah.
I print every once in a while, it's okay.
Yeah, technology has its place, but I still like certain things printed, so I'm glad we still do that.
So they, you know, there's multiple access points for that. Anybody can print it as well, from if they so chose, but it is, like you said, it's over 100 pages, right?
That's about 100, yeah.
Yeah. So we, once the student makes their course selections, and you know, they're encouraged to talk that over with their families and make their course selections, they'll input it into Skyward. And so counselors will review that process with students, whether it's through probably this year more through the Screencastify. And then when the students submit, their counselor reviews that, what they've chosen, and connects with them if they're not choosing things that are needed for graduation, or if they're missing something. So they have to approve of the students.
Okay.
Student schedule, essentially.
I just want to make sure no kids are slipping through the cracks and not realizing that they need to be meeting with their counselor and regular, or, you know, often enough to be on track.
I think there's a possibility that someone, you know, like you said, some kids have looked at it and they know their whole high school pathway
Right.
even before freshman year.
Yep.
And if they're following that pathway they set out, they may not end up, and things are going really well for that kid,
Mhm.
they may not request a meeting, and their counselor may not go, oh, you know what, I really need to touch base with them until their junior year. There's always that possibility. I don't want to say every kid.
Right, well, junior year is usually when, you know, then we talk about is, okay, are you gonna graduate? What are your plans for after graduation, that sort of thing, so that's understandable.
They'll have junior conferences with the students.
Okay, good. Yeah, because you're right, there's the range, there's the kids that are super planned out and focused, and the others that, oh, I didn't know I needed to do that, you know, so I just wanna make sure we're covering everybody.
And even the college application process is so different. And if your family hasn't gone to college, you have no idea that, when you have to start looking at that.
Oh, even if you have, it's different now than it was 30 years ago, so it doesn't even matter if you have before or not.
My brother always jokes around, because with my age of children, but the children nowadays, when my older siblings went to UW schools, and really when I went to UW schools, it was, as long as you had a certain rank in your high school, you didn't have to take ACT or SAT or any of that.
Mhm.
And we're coming back to that now.
Yeah,
But,
thank goodness.
but it was, you know, that pressure of all of those pieces wasn't always in place when
No.
parents were going to apply.
Thank you.
Yeah.
On the course planning guide online, I mean, this is a Tim question, but there's the table of contents at the beginning. Is there any way to like make it linkable? Like, ooh, I want social studies, boom, social
Yeah,
studies.
we'd have to build the headers out in there.
Well, that's what it, I mean,
Is
it
it, is
is.
the new one like, I haven't looked at
The old one was like that too.
Was
I
it?
just
Okay.
don't know when it's put online if that,
I wonder if they have it set up as a PDF or the Google Doc.
I
I'll have to look, 'cause if
think
it's the
it's-
Google Doc, then they're fine, that should do that, but if they
Okay.
convert it to a PDF, those links won't always. It'll
I'm just trying to think of,
Where I hit
if you
tap
don't
that, or I
want to
hit
print
social
100
studies.
pages and you
Yep.
really want to look at this
Yep.
one subject area.
I'll do some checking to see what's on there, so.
We, future forward, the high school will be managing this much more. And we threw out, you know, in a couple of years, what we'd like the course planning guide to be like, where it's more of an interactive PDF. And, but I think you're right, I think it is online as a PDF because of how long it takes to open as a Google Doc.
Mm.
And, and if we're losing that functionality. we may
And
have to-
printing it out as a Google Doc would be harder than PDF, I would think as well, for, you know, because of different platforms, different hardware, yeah. Okay.
And the PDF reduces the number of how big the file is.
Yes.
Yeah, well, it just looks nicer too. I'm
Yeah,
just trying to
yeah.
think of ways to make it easier to navigate when you're online.
So if it were an interactive PDF.
Or more like a hot link to, okay, now it just jumps to that page.
Yes, yeah.
And I think long term, when Laura talks about that, working with Mike Leskowski, our graphics teacher, to make it truly an interactive piece
Yeah.
and redesign at that point. Timeframe doesn't allow for it this year, but potentially we could take that document next year and create it into that interactive PDF, or there's other ways of building it into interactive web pages and in essence, a built-in app into a web page, so.
Long-range planning, that's a goal.
Mhm.
But I know this year, I think we'll be taking steps along the way.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
So that brings us to another course revision, which is in the CTE area, and Tim Hart's going to talk about that.
All right, so good morning. So as you've known, in the last couple of years, we've changed some courses in our business and IT department up at the high school, and so, which is not uncommon. And in CTE areas, you often change our courses a little bit faster than you may see in other areas due to technology, what's needed in business and industry, and so forth. Over the past couple of years, we've added a requirement for every student when they graduate that they must take personal finance. And so we're at the point where we're seeing the ramifications of some of these course changes, now working our way down to our middle school program across the street at Badger Middle School. And so once we required every child to take personal finance, we are starting to see some duplicate learning opportunities for kids in middle school and high school. And so working with Rachel over at Badger, who is one of the two teachers that teaches in our business program over there, talking about the future of what this could be. The recommendation that we're bringing forth for feedback today is to remove the personal finance unit out of the middle school class, so it's not duplicated again when they take it up at the high school level, and to basically redo it with a general finance and management and entrepreneurship, which allows our students at the middle school level to actually get a true exploratory experience for all of the courses that we offer at the high school. So through High School of Business up at the high school, we offer an entrepreneurship course, we offer accounting, we offer finance and management, and so it gives them what truly a middle school program should be as an exploratory of all of the options that a kid can take at the high school. And so really that's what we're looking at, is to remove that larger unit focused just on personal finance and replace the course, or replace that unit with a little more general exploratory piece. At the same time, looking at changing the name. The current course name is FIT, for Finance and Information Technology, but everybody calls it FIT. And when I have a 7th grader, when I was looking at the course sheet, and I'll be honest with you, my wife looked at it, she goes, "That's a FIED course?" I said, no, it's Finance and Information Technology.
It's, yeah.
Okay, I would know that, but everybody else. So part of it is we're recommending a course change, a course name change to Exploring Business, Marketing, and IT, and really getting into that exploratory language, what is really truly part of a comprehensive 712 CTE program. And so this mirrors other middle schools around the state in using that exploratory piece to it, and then giving that generalization of these are all of the little things you can do. And so, Tommy, if you really liked IT, here's the IT program of study at the high school. And Aaron, if you like, finance and accounting, here are your options when you get to the high school. So that's what we're proposing and asking for feedback on. Any questions?
I love that idea. I'm so glad you're not, I was a little concerned at first when you said, no, we don't want to duplicate, so we're, just removing the class and not replacing with something else, but it sounds like you're upgrading really.
Yep.
And like you said, that's middle school's a time when they should be introduced to different things and exploring, and that can give them more confidence in the choices that they make in high school. So I'm really happy about this.
I totally agree about that. I love this idea, it's really broad. You have like business and IT, and it's really one of those things where you click with the kid and be like, oh, we're going to high school and I'm going this direction. Yeah, I think it's great.
Okay.
This is Nancy, just a quick thing, because I've had kids who have taken both. I think my sophomore right now, she took it at middle school, and now she'll take it again in high school. So I do agree not to duplicate efforts, but I would hate to lose an opportunity in middle school to do some financial work with those students that's kind of tailored to, things that they'll come in contact with. I mean, many of those students I mean, it's very different than when we were in school, right? Our big deal, I mean, obviously I know I'm dating myself, but you know, our big deal was to get a checkbook, right? That was a big deal then. Well, you know, now they have debit cards, so, you know, I do think that it would be critical to still teach them about banking and debit versus credit and, you know, the financial troubles that some people find themselves in because of credit cards, and that's not a, you know, you still should have the money in the bank if you're going to spend it kind of a thing. I mean, obviously the teacher can work that out, but I do think that's still important in middle school because some banks, you know, with parent permission, are, you know, I think those kids can get debit cards as young as, you know, 12 or 14. So I do think that's critical. Maybe also kind of diving into some of the newer technology. I know some students now can actually receive their paychecks on like a debit card as opposed to direct deposit into a bank. So I do think a unit in middle school that teaches about that would be still really, really beneficial to students, because I'm sure there are still some parents out there that maybe don't sit down and have that Nancy just been harping on her kids about wasting money frivolously conversation, you know. So I do think that I would hate to see that lost. I'd still like to see the kids have some kind of, you know, formal training on that, but something that's more age appropriate that makes sense to them at that middle school time.
So Nancy, in the course, there still will be a finance and accounting portion of it. There's a taxes portion of it and stock market. There's also, they still do junior achievement finance as part of that. That portion of it isn't removed. So I think some of those experiences will still stay. And you're right. I mean, I was just talking to a kid the other day, and they pull out their debit card and want to know where they could pay at the high school. And as a freshman, I was like, wow, cool. And my parents wouldn't have trusted me with one of those things when I was 18. So I think those are things that I'll work with the teacher on to make sure that we still have those experiences within those new and existing units as part of the program of study.
And then the state has two other requirements. One is called Education for Employment, which is a K-12 requirement to connect your courses to how might you use this in your career. You know, that's the question that kids always ask.
Mhm.
When am I ever going to use this in life,
Mhm.
right?
Oh,
And
you
so-
will, trust me.
Yeah. Generally, that's woven and embedded throughout the courses and part of the conversation as you're learning, right? And then there's the academic and career planning, which starts in grade 6 and goes all the way through. And within those, there is a component to attend to that personal finance. So when you're talking about academic and career planning, and you're looking at if you are planning to go to college, what's the economic plan behind that, right? What's your finance plan behind that? If you're, you know, what are your as you're looking at your goals, and how does your career choice impact the other goals that you're making, and that has to be part of your plan. So if you want to move out of your parents' house when you're 18, what do you need, you know? And if your career plan is this, what do you need to do? And
Well, and it
So-
might not necessarily be college.
Correct.
And
that's,
I mean, there are kids in the trades that are making more money than kids graduating from college, so I want to
And I
make
think-
sure that's
And I think a lot of those
neglected.
experiences, when you talk about a comprehensive program of study from that experience, that, you know, those basic things that Nancy's talking about too, when you get into high school with personal finance and some of the additional business and IT courses, and we still run reality day at the high school, and those types of experiences, by the time they leave, they have those skill sets for it. And so I think there's plenty of opportunities in there. We just continue to work through our current units of finance accounting to talk about those types of things. And often those initial finance conversations are, so you have a job and here's your budget. What do you do with your money? How do I save it? How do I, how do I not just take my first paycheck and, blow it all at Quick Trip on junk when I leave Badger Middle School or whatever else. So.
This is how far you'll get with it,
Yeah.
so to speak.
and that the academic career planning is universal. The class is an elective. So some students will take it and will get that. The way we make sure everybody's had exposure is through and granted this year we're operating differently because we've extended passing times in order to reduce the number of students in the hallway at one time. And we've, so course schedules are modified, which also means resource periods are modified. So We're not quite doing it the same this year as we will again in future years, but those are some of the opportunities for it to be universal.
Good.
That is all we had on the agenda for today.
Anybody have anything else to add? Nancy? She's good. Okay, well, we will adjourn.